Today, the U.S. Senate heard the results of our investigation into the tax fraud happening here in Tampa Bay. Criminals are using someone else's name and social security number to file a tax return, and they are succeeding in getting refunds from the federal government. $1 billion may have been stolen here in the Tampa Bay region just this year. Now, lawmakers are saying it has to stop. Lauren Mayk broke this story, and she has an update tonight on this 8 on Your Side investigation.
There is a tax scam that is going on in this country.
Tax fraud in Tampa Bay is now in the national spotlight, as Senator Bill Nelson urged colleagues from the Senate floor to help put a stop to it.
That's a ripoff of the American taxpayer because that's their money.
It's a lot of money, coming in the form of preloaded debit cards and treasury checks. Authorities caught $100 million in the mail, but the crime could be worth $1 billion here. I interviewed Senator Nelson about the problem in Florida last week after he filed legislation to help tackle the issue we first told you about this spring. Starting in February, taxpayers contacted 8 on Your Side and told us someone had filed tax returns using their personal information, causing headaches and a months-long delay in getting their real refund. Meanwhile, millions of dollars from false returns were affording an extravagant lifestyle for thieves.
The jewelry, the cash that's thrown around, the cars.
Tax season again.
It's so appealing, it even inspired a rap song about the money to be made and the women making it happen. Now, local law enforcement, teaming with the Secret Service and the U.S. Postal Inspector's Office, are cracking down on the crime. But police say they run into roadblocks like privacy laws that prevent the IRS from sharing information.
And of course, we want to protect the privacy of people, but we also want to go after these crooks.
The issue has also caught the attention of U.S. Representative Kathy Castor, who this week called for a hearing into the tax fraud scheme. Both have said they believe the crime is happening beyond Tampa Bay. And if that's true, it could be costing U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars.
When somebody in this electronic age can just sit at a computer, steal a Social Security number, and then file a false tax return, enough is enough.
Lauren Mayk, News Channel 8.
Bay Area officers find signs of tax fraud nearly every day. Maybe a ledger of people's names that could be used to file fake tax returns. Maybe debit cards that have tax refunds on them, all in the hands of people who are not supposed to have them. Even though police say they know it when they see it, they often can't do anything about it. News Channel 8 was the first to tackle this tax fraud problem, and we have been breaking news on it for more than a year now. Tonight, Lauren Mayk shows us why prosecuting these cases is so difficult.
This is the evidence. Stashed in a backpack, police found notebooks with names, birthdays, and social security numbers, debit cards, TurboTax papers, and photocopied social security cards. Officers thought it looked like signs of identity theft and the tax fraud scheme where people file fake tax returns under someone else's name and have refund money loaded onto debit cards. They found it on a traffic stop last year on Lantana Avenue when they pulled over driver 36-year-old Richard Livingston for not wearing a seatbelt. Livingston initially told police he didn't know anything about the stuff in the car, but later said he got the personal info from someone else. Richard Livingston was arrested, but ultimately he didn't face any charges for the information police found here because the state attorney's office said they had no proof he was doing something illegal. Sherry Maxim is an assistant state attorney in Hillsborough County who reviewed the case.
What we have evidence of is him possessing this information. There was nothing to show that he was using it, and we don't have admissible evidence to show his fraudulent intent.
She explained why so many cases like this just don't go anywhere.
We would need a state law that said that possessing alone is enough, that possession of people's personal identifiers alone is enough.
Right now, Maxim says it takes more than just catching someone with the information to charge them with identity theft. You need to prove they're using it or intending to use it, and that's tough, sometimes impossible. It can mean issuing subpoenas for bank records if you find someone with a bunch of credit and debit cards, and getting video of someone swiping a card with someone else's name on it, or a witness who can identify them.
So just having a ledger full of names and social security numbers that don't belong to you
is not a crime?
Unfortunately, no.
That's a shock to Tim Shipley. Police say they found a MasterCard with his name on it during that traffic stop last year.
All of a sudden, an officer knocks on my door and tells me, "You're involved in this tax fraud thing." And I said, "Okay."
Shipley doesn't know if his info was used to file a tax return because he's disabled and doesn't file. But he doesn't like the idea of someone having a card in his name.
That's just wrong.
And Tampa Police spokeswoman Andrea Davis says it happens all the time.
The frustration for the officers is they see this on a regular basis. They see a traffic stop where they have someone with hundreds of names and social security numbers and date of birth. They have them in their possession and they have to let them go.
That's because there's nothing illegal about the stuff itself, not the personal information on more than 50 deceased individuals police say they found on that traffic stop, not the debit cards. And evidence and cases like this one keep coming.
Yeah, do you get these every day?
Yes.
How many a day do you get?
It's slowed down a little bit. I would have to say probably around 3 to 5 a day.
They've successfully prosecuted several dozen, but many don't go anywhere.
When you close the file and say, we just can't go forward with this one, how do you feel?
In a way, frustrated. I understand intellectually, based on the law, why we're not able to go forward, but in your heart, you're just disturbed and bothered and in a way sickened with the fact that something like this could happen.
Sherry Maxim told me if the law is changed to make it illegal to just have this stuff, it would have to be done very carefully, with exceptions for when someone like an accountant has a legitimate reason to have it. And, you know, I tried to reach the person in this case that we mentioned, Richard Livingston. We went to the address that he listed with law enforcement several times and got no response.
Nothing there. Yeah. And isn't this really a federal crime? Anyway, we're talking about tax fraud.
Yeah, it's interesting, Stacey. That's where it gets very, very tricky. A lot of these cases don't get picked up by federal prosecutors. There just are so many of them. But local law enforcement and the state attorney's office want to do something when they find this stuff. So they use the state identity theft statute. And as you can see, that just doesn't always work. State Representative Dana Young says it was our reporting that prompted her to look deeper at the problem.
I think you've done a really good job at pinpointing the problem.
Young says she wants to work with local law enforcement to look at a change that would let law enforcement arrest people with others' personal information while keeping exceptions in mind.
I think if I file a bill that is carefully crafted and narrowly tailored to solve the problem, that we can get unanimous buy-in in the House and Senate.
And now the latest on our 8 on Your Side tax fraud investigation. Criminals who were stealing money from the government through fake returns apparently had a little help from a police officer. That now former police officer made an emotional plea for mercy in court, but he made a quick getaway from News Channel 8's Lauren Mayk outside.
Dana Brown rushed out of the courthouse to avoid our cameras. He didn't want to talk to me about his alleged role in a tax fraud scheme to steal more than $1 million from the government.
Can you tell me why you got involved with this?
Filing fake tax returns with other people's identities has become big business for criminals in the Bay Area. But Dana Brown was a police officer and a former soldier. He's been in trouble before, though. This is a photo of him when he was charged with using a worthless check in 2002. He became an Ocala police officer after that, and federal investigators say he worked with this man, Tampa businessman Riyadh Suleiman, who was taking in Treasury checks from the tax fraud scheme at his clothing store. Suleiman allegedly gave Officer Brown lists of names on the checks, and Brown looked them up in the state's driver's license system, so Suleiman could have IDs to match the checks and cash them at Regions Bank, where a bank employee was in on it.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say?
Brown didn't talk to me, but his attorney did.
Why did he tell you that he got involved with this?
Stupidity. He got, at that point, it was a question of he was just helping someone get identities and confirming identities. And he was going to get paid. And he had child support payments. He had no money.
Well, if you haven't filed your taxes yet, there is a danger that someone could beat you to it. Last year, our 8 on Your Side tax fraud investigation uncovered a scheme that criminals were using to make a lot of money. They were using other people's identities to file returns and get some big refunds. The IRS promised to make changes, But police say this fraud is still happening, and it could be even worse this year. News Channel 8's Lauren Mayk went looking for answers.
Before the doors open at the IRS building in Tampa, a line forms. Wesley and Deirdre Clark made sure to be near the front of it.
What time did you come out here today?
6 in the morning. 6.
They bundled up their 7.5-month-old and came looking for help after someone filed tax returns pretending to be them. We found a half dozen people with the same problem in this line.
The H&R Block said it could be a couple months before we even see a refund.
The Clarks are among the New Year's victims of the tax fraud scam that exploded in Tampa last year. In our 8 on Your Side investigation, we showed you how the lucrative scheme produced cash for fancy cars. Police say during traffic stops, they found ledgers of names and social security numbers and debit cards loaded with other people's refund money. Tampa police did a roundup to fight the crime last year. This year, the IRS says it has new screening filters and ways to stop the fraud before it occurs. But is it enough?
Everything that we have seen on the street is that there has not been a slowdown in the tax fraud.
I sat down with Tampa Police Chief Jane Castor about 2 weeks into the new filing season.
For taxpayers who haven't filed their taxes yet, should they be more comfortable this year that they will not be victimized, or less comfortable?
I can tell you that the suggestion around the Tampa Police Department is file early. All the police officers are filing as soon as we possibly can.
That's so someone doesn't use your name and social security number before you do. Castor says she thinks there will be even more victims this year.
The new filters that are being put in place by our IRS, we don't hold out a lot of hope that those will be effective, because the filters that they have in place now aren't really effective at all.
Chief Castor says they still see multiple cards with refund money going to the same address, a red flag that someone might be filing fake returns. She says the system is broken. Not only does fraud get through, but fraudsters can get away with stealing thousands, even millions, during the months it can take to get federal charges.
So we have an individual that we know did in the ballpark of $9 million in tax fraud. He was arrested and charged in September, and there's no reason for us to believe that he slowed down at all. And there's no charges. Since September, there's no charges been brought.
Is he still out on the street?
Yes.
Last month, the IRS announced an identity theft crackdown and said the nationwide sweep took place over a week. But as Chief Castor pointed out, some of the cases the IRS cited went back years.
How should we view this crackdown? Is it something that looks like it made a difference?
Well, I guess it determines how, or it depends on how you define crackdown.
She says this doesn't meet her definition.
So would you like to hear what the IRS has to say about all this? Well, we would, but the IRS won't talk to me on camera. The police chief has, and so have multiple sheriffs, victims, and members of Congress. But the IRS won't do it.
That won't stop 8 on Your Side from calling.
This is Lauren Mayk with Wfla in Tampa.
Lauren Mayk with Channel 8 in Tampa, Florida.
I'm calling about the tax fraud issues.
So I wanted to find out what you're seeing. Do you believe your filters are working? I would love to talk to you on camera. I would love to talk to anyone from the IRS on camera about this.
The IRS says dealing with this crime is a priority, but won't sit down to talk about it. Chief Castor will, but this problem is bigger than Tampa.
This is a federal problem. This is a problem for the IRS. And there just doesn't seem to be a lot being done about it.
Frustration is also clear outside the IRS building.
It's not working. Whatever they're doing is not working. It should be a solution to the problem. And the Internal Revenue need to find a solution for us where we wouldn't have to go through this.
In the meantime, new victims line up for answers.
Now, as you saw in that video, I can get the IRS on the phone, but they won't talk to me on camera. And then they usually want to take my questions and send me a written statement like this one. Now, in it, the IRS said that it's taking additional steps this year to detect and prevent fraudulent refunds. They said, quote, as part of this effort, we've designed powerful new identity theft screening filters to improve our ability to spot false tax returns before they are processed. Now, the IRS says that those filters are working as intended, but they wouldn't give me any details.